Tonight, we've been looking at the plight of veterans, especially those who have fought and are fighting still in our most recent conflicts. Most men and women who serve in war are young, very young. They will be living these wars for decades to come. Veterans have always been among our most important oral historians. They have seen so much in service to this country. In hearing their stories, we learn that war is and always has been pure, unmitigated hell. Even as the conflicts of the past fade into our history books. There is perhaps no more moving tribute to the cost of war than the memorial to the USS Arizona in Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. It is the most popular tourist attraction in the state, drawing millions of people from around the world since it opened in 1962. For America, this harbor is where World War II began, with a devastating Japanese surprise attack on a sleepy Sunday morning, December 7th, 1941. In all, more than 2,400 Americans died that day, including 1,177 aboard the USS Arizona. The memorial, built over the remains of the sunken battleship, inspires reflection in visitors of all ages. It has a special draw for men and women currently on active duty, including those who choose this site for their re-enlistment ceremonies.
According to regulation.
According to regulation.
And the Uniform Code of Military Justice.
And the Uniform Code of Military Justice.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations and thank you.
Thanks, sir.
Stephen.
Veterans of World War II have long journeyed to this place to pay homage to their fallen comrades. And every year, on the anniversary of the attack, Pearl Harbor survivors gather for a special ceremony of remembrance. A ceremony that honors the heroes of that day. But year after year, there is a realization that the ranks of those who are able to make the journey back here are rapidly dwindling. On September 12, 2012, the Arizona Memorial was closed for a special ceremony. The family of a recently deceased Pearl Harbor survivor had gathered with other dignitaries for a solemn event that has only taken place a handful of times, and pretty soon will never happen again. The family invited us to document and share their story with the world.
Good afternoon, and welcome to the 36th Interment.
For 30 years, there has been a provision for military burials at Pearl Harbor. Those who survived the attack can have their ashes spread over the waters here, and hundreds have chosen to do so. But for those who were actually on the battleship Arizona that day and survived, they have the option of rejoining their fallen shipmates by having their ashes interred on the grizzled steel wreck where so many perished more than 70 years ago. Today, Master Chief Glenn Harvey Lane is about to become the 36th man interred that way here.
This was the one that they took at a photography studio in downtown Honolulu, and they said he looked so much like a movie star, they asked if they could put it up on their wall. And I think it stayed there for years and years and years.
It's definitely the Clark Gable.
Yeah.
Trish Anderson is Lane's youngest daughter. She says her father lived a long and rich life full of friends and family. But as he saw his kids grow up, walk them down the aisle at the weddings, enjoy his favorite fishing spots, there was always a keen sense that many of his shipmates never had these opportunities. His bond to the men of the Arizona, both living and dead, remained unbreakable.
My father's dream was to rejoin his shipmates one day, and today's that day. He's ready to go down there and have be it his final resting place with all the shipmates that he lost at Pearl Harbor.
On the dock on the way out to the memorial, Anderson met Captain Larry Scruggs, the commander of the naval base at Pearl Harbor.
We are so honored to be able to do this. This is just incredible for us.
I just can't believe that we can actually do this. We're going to do it. Wonderful.
Like all tourists to the Arizona Memorial, Trish and her family took a Navy launch out to the sunken battleship. This is an official military event, but it is also a deeply personal one. The flag at the memorial was flying at half-mast, and when the family and friends of Master Chief Glenn Lane disembarked, they were met by a Navy ceremonial guard standing at attention. Lane had served 30 years of active duty, rising to the highest enlisted rank in the Navy. But his thoughts often turned back to these waters and his experience as a young aviation radio man for one of the planes assigned to the Arizona. That's him on the wing with his good friend, the pilot, Ensign Lawrence Williams, who would die in the attack.
It was the middle of the Depression when I got out of high school in 1935, and there was no money.
Lane's family wanted to save his stories for posterity, so they recorded him on video in 1999. It lasted over 2 hours.
At that time, Hitler was making war noises over in Europe.
He covered a life that spanned most of the 20th century. And this is the first time this oral history has ever been shown publicly. On the morning of December 7, 1941, Lane was getting ready to write Christmas cards back home when the Japanese attacked. He rushed to warn his shipmates still sleeping that Sunday morning.
When I told them, get out of your bunks, the Japs are hitting the ships ahead of us, they'll hit us next. He said, Lane, your April Fool jokes are going to get you in real trouble one of these days. I said, it ain't April Fool, buddy. I said, take a look over at Ford Island, you think I'm kidding you. She's on fire.
The Naval Air Station at Ford Island in Pearl Harbor was burning. The Japanese wanted to make sure that they eliminated American air power before they attacked the battleships. Then a bomb hit the Arizona, and Lane headed to the deck.
I meet a Marine second lieutenant at the top of the ladder. He said, where do you think you're going? I said, I'm going to my battle station. He said, get back down there. We won't have any panic on this ship. I said, I'm not panicking, mister. I'm going to my battle station. And I just shouldered him out of the way and went aft to my battle station, which was a repair station on the after end. We were on fire back here. I went back to fight that fire.
The most devastating moment of the attack was dramatized using special effects in the Hollywood film Pearl Harbor. But of course, it really happened. And Glenn Lane was one of the few who survived the sinking of the Arizona to tell about it.
Those turrets both blew their magazines, and that ship just disintegrated in the forward end. And I remember this much, it shuddered, it jumped out of the water just like that, and then dropped back in the water, and then a great big ball of flame come roaring back. And I remember doing this much. I remember dropping my arms, my head in my hands, my arms, and I turned my back real quick, and then I got hit. And just like a big hot broom wrapped you across the back. And then I floated. I either passed out quick like, or from the heat or something, or burns, but I don't recall going over the lifelines or going through them or anything.
There is very little film of the airstrike itself, except for this footage shot by the Japanese pilots. The aftermath, however, was well documented. The film you're seeing has been stored in the vaults of the National Archives for years, but is rarely seen. It was shot on the day of the attack and shows the Pacific Fleet engulfed in a billowing blackness, a curtain of thick smoke that could be seen for miles. Yet it is the intimacy of this footage that is so startling. We see young men who have lost shipmates and friends rushing to extinguish the flames on the Arizona and the other battleships. they climbed the hull of the overturned Oklahoma. Pearl Harbor had become a mass grave. So many men had died. And Glenn Lane experienced all of this firsthand.
My next recollection, I'm underwater, struggling to get to the surface. I got to the surface and had 6 inches of oil floating on the water. It was oil tanks that burst. And it's hard to swim and burn in oil. And I turned around and looked behind me, looked at the ship. It was fairly close, but I couldn't see any living people aboard the ship. I could see nobody. I could see guys, chunks of guys hanging on lifelines. You know, they got blown against there and got practically shredded. But I couldn't see anybody alive on there, so I'm not going back there.
Lane swam to another battleship, the USS Nevada, which was then also struck by the Japanese.
So I'm probably the only guy in the world who had 2 battleships shot off under him in less than 2 hours. So if that's worth another beer or so, okay.
We're gathered here today to say farewell to Aviation Master Chief Glenn H. Lane, father, husband, son, most of all, shipmate.
The interment ceremony for Glenn Lane took place in the shrine room of the memorial, where the list of names of those who were lost that day is etched in marble. There were speeches.
Master Chief Lane, you embody the spirit and the tradition of our rich Navy. Your life is an inspiration to us in this time of war and challenge.
And there was a prayer led by a Navy chaplain.
O God of grace and glory, we remember before you this day our brother, our hero, Master Chief Lane.
Lane's ashes sat in a metal box on a table.
We now ask that all of you take one moment of silence with us for a minute and think of those that are here, of the 1,177 officers, sailors, and Marines, and of the 36 that have returned to their ship and their shipmates.
Daniel Martinez, the chief historian for the National Park Service at Pearl Harbor, has overseen many of these interments. The box of ashes was walked the length of the memorial to the dock where divers were waiting. One was a friend of Glenn Lane who had received special permission to participate in this ceremony. Lane's daughter, Trish, handed him the box, grasping it one last time. The divers held the box aloft until the last possible moment, and then they disappeared below the waves, bringing Glenn on his final journey home.
Make ready to aim, fire! Ready, aim, ready, aim,
Glenn Harvey Lane was 93 years old when he died. All those decades of life and family of which so many of his shipmates had been cheated. In the final act of the ceremony, Trish unveiled the addition of her father's name to a block of marble bearing the names of other survivors of the Arizona who have been interred on their ship.
I just think that was the biggest moment of his entire life, and he was only 23. I mean, when you think about it, 23, he was a little more than a kid. He had a lot of friends, and the ensign pilot that he flew with is still in the ship. A lot of people that he partied with in Honolulu and Waikiki, whenever they would be able to go into port, most of them were all dead. He just figured that would be fitting to go back there with them. it was just great to be able to finally put him to rest in there.